on the nice working camera we have now. How to get, and Miss Liz is the next one. The tube you have to get them in is tiny. It's like a coffee stir, smaller than a coffee stir. So the trick is, and there will be a Petri dish. There's 2 stations at the back next to the microscope, and 2 stations here to the front. And what you're going to do is be able to go with your team, like team 1, right? Aren't they numerical teams? Okay, yeah. So team 1, high school and middle school, can be at this first microscope here, right? Team 2, 3, 4, right? Just so I know there's going to be like 8 people crowded around a microscope, but at least if somebody from high school and middle school can see the process and experiment and try it, it takes practice, unless you're a gifted worm whisperer, okay? Miss Liz, she's making kissy noises towards the thing. She's had them at her house for a couple days now. They're used to her. All right. So, in a Petri dish at each station, there will be several black worms, which we can put one up there. They're tiny. You want to put one of these dishes up there so they can see, because me showing it up here tonight. So put that up there so you can see. Maybe a piece of white paper underneath it.
Yeah.
Here.
That helps.
Because there are about, what, 6 or 7 in there?
Yeah.
Put the white paper under it, you can see. They're hiding from the tube.
They are. They don't like light.
And so the idea is, we didn't have spaghetti today, come on.
Right.
All right, so we will probably one day, though, at lunch, we're guaranteed to have spaghetti a couple times while we teach this, right? Okay. And so they like to bunch up, they don't like the light.
They don't like heat.
They don't like heat. So they're not going to like the microscope, right? So it's all right. We're not going to hurt them. We're just going to annoy them, all right, for a little bit.
Okay.
And so that is the purpose of this. Can you see these tiny little capillary tubes?
Oh, no.
They're very tiny. Like Jacob went to the eye doctor yesterday. I should have had an appointment too, because I can't even see a hole in there, but there is one. Okay. All right. And so the idea is to get one worm cut. You could use the tip of the, somebody want to demonstrate? You could get the tip of the pipette to kind of isolate a worm away. Just take one.
Yeah.
You're going to try it? You're going to be a worm whisperer, Charles?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Over there on there so they can see.
Yeah.
Yep. So from the Petri dish, you're going to try to just get one worm in your pipette. If you suck up more than one, because they like to be buddies, it's tough. It's tough. They don't like it. They don't like it.
Oh.
And you got to make sure to take water as well, because you know they need the water to be happy.
Get 'em.
Right? See why we need to practice? So now the hard part is,
And stick it.
if you stick the capillary tube into the thing, and you're going to squirt like a happy, and you got to squirt it in there with some water. Don't leave them high and dry.
They don't know what's going on.
That's why we felt this the most necessary part of our experiment to practice, because it is tricky. And the kids during the experiment are going to have to find a worm and suck him up 6 times. 6 times, 6 different worms. So really every student in the group could have a chance to try to get one staged in the capillary tube, right? So everyone can actually have a chance of doing this when we're in the classroom and there's only 4 people around a microscope. But in here, we'll see how we are in time, because I think it's the most important that we get that help so that you'll understand how you can tell it. Because I looked at this and thought, we aren't going to be able to get them in there. But Liz,
There's some in there.
Yep. Okay, so now that we have him up in there, we're trying to get him into the capillary tube. Tricky, because they don't want to go. Miss Liz can make kissy noises. Come on, get him in there.
There you go.
There's one. So, the purpose of trapping them, sounds terrible, but releasing them, okay, is so that they will be, they're still alive, of course, because we're going to count their pulse rates here in a minute under the microscope. But it kind of gets them so they don't wriggle and writhe and get all curled up again. Kind of keeps them straight. They can't go too crazy in the tube this size, right? Can't have a worm rave party or anything. They're kind of stuck. So then you can put this under the microscope and be able to observe that pulse rate. And so that's what our goal is, why we're sticking them in tiny tubes, because it holds them a little
Have you
without restraining. Yes, ma'am.
have you guys already seen one
This is the first time we're working with the real worms. Now, I did it like 10 years. I don't know how many years it's been.
It's been since before Leland.
Okay, so
my
Okay, so I did these experiments with Saturday Academy because Lord knows I didn't do them in my math classroom.
Right.
But we did them in Saturday Academy the first 5 years, maybe somewhere in there. And we did them with a lot of, we tested like nicotine because they was like soaked cigarette juice we had to put on the poor little guys. Okay, I remember that. So I've had experience with them, but I didn't have to stick them in a tiny tube.
Right.
That was good, but this was something that we found on the internet with YouTube, that these were like tips from science teachers that use these to get it so that, and it was, I remember, it was hard to get the pulse rate before because they would like wiggle jiggle. They don't like the light under that microscope, man. And it's going to get warm because it's a light underneath there. And they really, and it was like you're trying to find the pulse rate and follow it around. And so I'm going to show you YouTube. So we got some in the capillary tubes, right? And they're happy. Did you make sure they were happy?
Here's the thing, if they break, they're segmented worms, and that's kind of how they make
They
worms.
make more worms by breaking apart. But don't break them apart intentionally. When our supply gets low. Okay. So I'm going to show you the YouTube, and it's already like up in a capillary tube up underneath the microscope, so you'll know what you're looking for. So in a little bit, we will move to the 4 groups. The math team will disperse amongst the microscopes, and really that's the bulk of what we want you to do this last 15 minutes or everything is practice getting them in the tube and then looking at it under the microscope to try to find that pulse rate. You don't have to calculate for 1 minute a pulse rate. That is something that they did warn about. Mathematically, it pains me to say, but you can't just find the pulse rate for 15 seconds and then multiply by 4. That doesn't work with the little wormies.
For humans.
We have to test for a whole minute. That will be important too in the experiment. But today you don't have to watch it for 1 minute and find a pulse rate. Really, we wanted you to do the hard part so that you can help that sucking it up and squeezing it in, right? And then afterwards, we aren't just going to let them dry up in the tube. We're going to put them back in, right? And even after the experiment, once they're exposed to the different sugar water or artificial sugars, hopefully they'll still be alive. We're going to test on those concentrations so we know what will help keep them alive still. They will still go back into the population, right? And that way we will reutilize them. If a worm does pass away,
What a ceremony.
they do have to go ahead and get another worm number 1 and start again because they need 6 worms. They need the day. We'll have a little
I think that's worst case scenario, they can use a slide
other
and
dish
never
to put
slip.
those in.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, worst case scenario. Because some kids.
Oh yeah, this could be frustrating. So really our part of our first semester that we really need your help with is saying, it can be done. Look, I practiced. You know, right? So that they realize this is the tricky part, but necessary.
You want the light off
So-
so YouTube?
Well, it's just so that underneath the microscope, you're going to see something like this. It's the worm in a little tube, and you see how a pulse of blood just went by. I want to point at it, but I need to. And so the idea is not to follow that pulse of the blood, right? Is to find and focus on one segment of the body, and every time it contracts or moves, that's a pulse rate. Okay? So it's different. At first I was like, right. All right, no. So the way you properly take the pulse rate of the little worm, and that is a pre-post question now. We had 4 questions done. Yes. The 5th one's about how they properly take the pulse rate.
Okay.
I like some of my answers too. It's creative. So that's how you're just going to focus on one part of the segment of the body, and as it contracts, that's like 1, and then you're going to 2, 3. Yes. They are 2 seconds apart. It will vary in time. It seems to be coming, like this is a video, of course, of this worm, nothing live. And so it does come through quite often, but then it could slow down. That's okay, like you didn't miss one. That's why it's important to take their pulse rate for 1 full minute, because it will vary, which I just learned because Miss Carla told me that happens with infants too, right? That their pulse rate and their respirations, they'll be irregular to where like for several minutes, maybe no breath, and then all of a sudden 3 breaths or whatever. I didn't know that. That would scare me as a mom. So the same thing, I guess, with the worms, is that it's irregular, and we'll want to count for 1 full minute once we're really doing the experiment. And for each worm, they get their little tube. Listen, okay, they got the tube in. We took this normal resting heartbeat, not heart, pulse rate, no hearts. Then they got to get them out. Flush them out into a petri dish with whatever their concentration is of sugar, water, artificial sweetener. They start the time when they get them out of this little tube in there, and then the poor little guy has to go back in. Okay. We're messing with these little guys bad, right? But we want it to be that same worm so that we can see what pulse rate increase or decrease happen. And then they'll do that with 6 worms, just so you remember the rest of the experiment. And it's all written up on the experiment sheet, step by step, and of course we'll be there to explain it to the kids as well. But this is the tricky part, getting them in. Yes, ma'am.
You're gonna have them time the amount of time for that pulse rate with their phones, because
Yes, we have a few timer stopwatches,
Okay.
but yes, that's part of the supply list that we'll have out. I didn't put them today since we're not gonna time for a certain number of seconds unless you want to, but I felt like it was more important to give everybody a chance, and we didn't have the luxury of waiting a minute or more with everybody that's here with 4 stations,
So
so.
middle schoolers, all of them don't have phones?
Right.
So we'll have to make sure
Ours
that
and the
everybody's.
We have some timer, stopwatches, as well, because.
And our staff can do
Yeah,
that.
can help and put in their watch on the stopwatch.
And worst case scenario, the red
yeah, that's
Oh,
true.
yeah.
hand on the clock.
That's true, yes, somebody can, and there's lots of jobs in this experiment, since they're doing 6 worms, everyone that's gonna be involved in the experiment can do that part. Everybody can be a timer position, everyone can do, there's a time, they have to time the number of seconds they're exposed to the sugar water or artificial sweetener, right? Gotta do a disclaimer there. And how many, because the amount of time increases too. Worm number 1's only gonna be exposed for 30 seconds to the sugar water, then he's gonna be put back in this tube
Yes.
and then looked at.
Okay.
Then he's finally free to go back in the re-entry petri dish. And then they're gonna go with worm number 2 will be for 60 seconds in the sugar water, then looked at the pulse rate, and it increases by 30 seconds with each worm. So that way we can really we can do some cool math stuff with that over time and the exposure time and stuff. So that was the purpose of adding that. Yes.
Nice.
Miss Nadia.
So after putting the worms into like the sweetener or whatever temperature, and maybe 5 minutes pass by and you can't put it in the tube, I don't know how much time do you have to put it back in the
That's
tube
why.
for you to see.
I know. It's going to throw off the results if it's somebody that's not good or a very difficult worm that won't get in there, right? Because it's been exposed for 4 seconds.
So do you put it? Should we say put the worm back if you can't put it in there? You're just gonna see the results.
Can you not put the
If it got
capillary
ridiculous.
tube in with the worm in the capillary tube in the sugar solution?
He could, but he could flow out. You might have to jam him back in. All right? Sorry, I'm animated.
You are. That's why you left us.
We're worm wrangling on this one. We're going to call this experiment worm wrangle.
Word whisperer and word
Yes. Okay? So we have less than 15 minutes left, so that we definitely want you to experiment with this, and then if you could be with, if we do group, I know they're really close together, I'm sorry, but group number 1, high school and middle school teachers, 2, 3, and 4. And then if your staff are part of another module, of course, join any of the groups to help. But we definitely want the teachers and the mentors that will be with the students to definitely have practice with this. Because it will help us. You are a worm whisperer, we're going to give you the W1 shirt or something. Double, W squared, right.
So we got 20 minutes.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we only had till 1:15, 12:45 to 1:15.
So we're gonna, it's module days, we're gonna
Okay.
honor you, so that the next module will
Okay, perfect. Okay, so, Miss Liz, we got the worms at each station? Yep, and each station has a worm, a petri dish of worms, don't knock it off.
Thank you. I love
We'll
it.
have to have.
You did great. Did you love it?
Yes.